See that guy? That's probably you. Basically, you've built your first couple of rooms, you've done a bunch of horrible practices, and now you're frustrated. The compiler is complaining, there are leaks everywhere, and you wonder if mapping is even for you. But don't despair, we're going to start off with a little bit of technical info, and then we're going to fix each individual case. Okay? This is a brush. This is what we work with as mappers, and the thing is, it's remarkably fragile. If you just grab a random vertex and pull it up, that's it, it's no longer valid. It's simply the way the map format is designed. You know, in a typical 3D model format, geometry would be like a mesh of triangles. Everything is there. Every face, every vertex, every edge, it's all in there. And that's cool, but if you open a .map file, initially you might think, well, it looks pretty similar. I mean, there's 3 points that define a triangle, some texture information and whatnot. But the thing is, if you loaded these triangles as is, you would be missing half of the triangles, if not more. Thanks, Carmack. So how does the map editor load these and turn them into polygons? Well, the answer is these aren't triangles, these are actually planes. Let's look at this brush in 2D. Each face extends into an infinitely large surface, that is, a plane, and then they all intersect. Aha! Well, if we just add 2 more planes, we have defined a 3D volume. Cool. So if you have something like a 32-sided cylinder, you only got to write 3 vertices for the top and bottom face instead of the full set. Now that's pretty clever, and you do save a little bit of space on that, but unfortunately because of this cleverness we have suffered for the past 3 decades. Let's imagine for a second that you're making a corner ramp like this. You think to yourself, oh well, that's easy, I can just take this brush and raise this corner here, and bam, you got a non-planar face, like right there. Remember how I said the map only writes 3 vertices per face? And then this extends into a plane? Well, if you have a vertex that doesn't sit on the plane, it's gonna get discarded. So if you actually compiled the map, it might end up like this, or like this. It really depends on the order in which the map editor writes vertices. As you can imagine, this could produce leaks, and we don't want leaks. So the fix would be to just cut the brush into a couple triangles first, and then do your thing. Alright? I should note that triangles, or rather triangular prisms, aren't immune to this. So for example, you might be editing some terrain or whatever, and then you accidentally select the front vertex instead of both front and back. And moving this vertex is going to cause 2 or potentially more faces to become non-planar. So my next advice is to work in rows and columns, use 2D rectangle selection, and move the stuff with your arrow keys. Not the mouse, because the mouse selects. You might accidentally deselect everything. Use arrow keys. By editing in rows and columns, here's kind of what I mean. If I have an array of rectangles here and say I want to skew them, I'm not going to skew just one like this. Instead, I'm going to select an entire row of vertices along this axis. Note that I'm selecting both front and back vertices, not just the front ones. And if I wanted to make this wavy, I wouldn't do this. No, I would instead select a whole column of vertices and move it. We can then extend this logic to a 2D grid. If you want to perform an operation, you gotta do it on an entire row or column, and this applies to any 2D view. Now keep in mind, this is not a strict rule. If I wanted to make the dam from surface tension, I would make a curve like this, and that's pretty cool. Following the rules above, we would probably take the whole bottom side and just shift it. But I'm gonna make an exception here. I'm gonna drag just one column of vertices, not the entire side. And yes, this is fully intentional because my desire, my intent, is to preserve the shape. As a consequence though, I'm now no longer able to move these guys vertically. I'm locked out of that axis. Does that make sense? I broke the rule on one axis and it locked me out of the other 2. Alright? Now, I understand this seems extremely limiting, and it's even worse when you're, working with more complex polygons. Like, don't get me started on hexagons and octagons, but like, this is how you do it, and it's an exceptionally sweet technique for so-called quad terrain, like gearbox opposing force style terrain. And for other cases, we have triangles or triangular prisms and tetrahedra. I'm going to talk about tetrahedra some other time. It's a powerful shape, but it can get quite messy. In some cases, though, you can just triangulate a brush, and that's going to be fine. You can select two vertices and press Ctrl F, or let Jack figure out which vertices to connect with this shortcut. Now in Trench Broom, this is a non-issue. It handles non-planar faces automatically and triangulates the face whenever that's necessary. However, don't take this as an excuse to not bother with planarity, because if you abuse this, you're going to reach BSP limitations faster. You're going to utilize more planes, more BSP leaves, clip nose. I'm going to talk about optimization another time. That's quite nuanced. So, what on earth is concave and convex? Well, this is one, this is the other. You can kind of see that this one is bulging outwards and this one is going inwards. So a square is convex, but if you manipulate its vertices to be like this, you've produced a concave shape. You can see that as we extend the faces into planes, it's kind of three brushes now. The compiler simply doesn't know which ones to keep, so it just skips the entire brush. And if you need to construct this particular shape, or something like the letters L or U, you gotta decompose it, that is, make it out of convex shapes. Obviously, don't use the carve tool here, it's just gonna mess up your geometry, and we'll get into that some other time, but I saved the best for last. In the last video, you may have noticed that the pipes weren't exactly aligned with these little squares. This means they have off-grid vertices. Oh boy. So the grid is extremely important when starting out. In Jack, it's this little icon here, and let me point this out real quick. You can toggle it with Shift W, and this is indicated in this little corner here, snap-on grid versus snap-off grid. So if you're flying with the camera in the 3D view, you might press Shift to move a little faster, but if you press Shift first, then you're going to turn off the grid, so be aware of that. Now, the grid has a size, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 30, you know, it's powers of 2, you know. So for more structural things, I like to use a larger grid size, 16, sometimes 32. If I'm making doors, platforms, furniture, etc., I may drop down to 4 units, and really small details can do like 1 or 2 units. Maybe some plants, maybe computer, like stuff like mice monitors and keyboards and stuff. Anyway, that's all there is to the grid, right? Well, no, there's still numerous ways to f it up. One example would be to select an entire room and scale it, like the entire thing. Do not, I repeat, do not ever do that. If you look closer, you'll see that you've squished the walls and it's off-grid. If you do this, Gaben himself is going to curse your computer. That's how bad this is. But why is it bad? Like, why? Well, basically, if you decide to later modify one of the brushes individually, the brush is going to get misaligned. So you're going to snap it back onto the grid by scaling it, and that's going to create a gap. And if there's a gap, there's a leak. And you really don't want leaks. Also, if you made an entire map this way, yeah, Chief, you might want to rebuild that thing from scratch. If you want to edit the room's dimensions, edit the vertices instead. It's much safer. Cutting at angles. Okay, so basically just don't do this. Putting 2 clipping points somewhere randomly on the face. This kind of cutting easily lends itself to off-grid vertices. Instead, do this. Stick to edges, okay? And this is pretty simple to follow for like really simple 90-degree edges or 45-degree edges, but what about the rest? What about 30 degrees, 15 degrees? And that's where it gets tricky actually. I'm gonna have to make a dedicated video on that, but TLDR, it's the same principle as the stairs from the last video, so instead of angles you think in aspect ratios, like 1:1, 1:2, 1:4 and such. More info on that some other time, it's a bit of an advanced topic. The final example for now is just rotating stuff. If you rotate everything by 90 degrees, you're fine. But if you try rotating at a weird angle like 59 degrees or so, everything is going to be off the grid. However, there's an option to kind of snap it back on. In Jack, you can snap stuff simply by dragging every vertex individually, but this is limited. It's going to take a while also. In Trench Broom, you can easily snap all selected vertices to whole number coordinates or the current grid, so there's that. I do gotta mention though that if you're rotating some super simple geometry like a box within a room, that's actually perfectly harmless. It's not gonna break anything. But with complex things like entire rooms or maybe very delicate sculptures in the middle of a room, you're risking it. So don't do that. But really simple things like boxes, maybe like a table, that's also fine. Now, obviously, this isn't a complete list. This is merely a starter kit, some degree of guidance. As you get more experienced, you're going to understand how to work on the grid better. Okay, I think we've covered everything for today. Let's actually react to some comments now. Glove Relaxes says, Ew, you're a furry, repulsive, unsubscribed. Bye, good riddance. Alex is a game developer using Godot and Trench Broom. Wow. Yeah, so we met up after that comment in VR chat, like maybe next day or so. But also, I'm surprised. Like, the last video attracted a lot of VR chat furries and Godot Trench Broom folks. I mean, I'm not complaining. Like, hell yeah, we need more of that. It's pronounced miter, not mitter, dingus. Oh my god, I was fully anticipating this type of response. I don't know, I just kind of pick whatever pronunciation I like and it becomes part of my accent. I'd also say fillet and chamfer, like I'm just not a native speaker. Myslím ako väčšiny oči, to ja sam bosanská seljačina. A iskreno nemam pojma kako se ove stvari zovu na našem, mislim ovaj mitering i chamfer i filet, ne znam veľa. Gotcha there, Bosnian jump scare. Tipsy says, NixOS as your desktop? I just gotta know why. Okay, believe it or not, this is actually my first serious daily driver distro. I did use a little bit of Mint, a little bit of Arch on my laptops, but it was never a lot. Like, it was never a daily driver. I just tested some things on it. In summer last year, I was convinced by a couple of friends to try it, NixOS that is, and so I did. In August 2025, I installed it, and bit by bit, I ported everything to it. Everything works so far. I can do VR stuff, I can do Half-Life modding, I can do video editing, I can do music production. It really doesn't feel any different. It's just, yeah, it's an operating system. What can I tell you? I do love the whole config-driven thing, especially for drivers and kernel stuff and whatnot. Though I am doing unorthodox workarounds for some apps, but it's not like I wasn't doing that on Windows anyway, so it's fine by me. And finally, Light Device says they want an advanced terrain video. Okay, sure. Yeah, let's actually do that next time. It's a little out of order, but I'd appreciate a change of pace. So, yeah, until then, happy mapping.